The doctor was right. Mom's recovery at home was much quicker and more dramatic than Dad and I could have imagined. 3 weeks later, she was walking unaided, although she still limped, and most of the hoarseness was gone from her voice. Her speech was still slurred to the point where you wanted to finish every sentence for her, but now you could easily understand every word out of her mouth. I think this was mostly due to the fact that Christine brought Ben to her house every afternoon. At first, I was sure Christine wanted to use this as an excuse to spend time with me. But I was busy writing and could only spare an hour or so in the afternoon to play with Ben on the floor, feed him his lunch, or just watch him take a nap with his mom. As soon as he went to bed, I would go back to work and try to finish the second book. Then I'd go back downstairs, spend another hour with my son before dinner, and go back to writing again. All in all, my sleep was suffering. For several days in a row, Kristen hung around the room trying to engage me in conversation. I made it clear that conversation was not on the agenda, and she stopped bothering me. After the first week, Kristen would only show up in the room for the first hour or so, the time I spent with Ben, and would return after dinner to pick him up. She seemed more than content to let Mom and Dad spend time with him that she deprived us of, and I spent 2 or 3 hours a day with my son, and Mom and Dad spent the rest of the day with him. You may have noticed that I just referred to Ben as my son. That's because the DNA test came back just 5 days after I gave my saliva. He was mine, to the exclusion of every male on planet Earth and even a few other planets. And that made the rest of my lawsuit against Christine a trifle trivial. And it all took place at James McNally's conference table. Next chapter. So, McNally began, I've prepared a fairly simple agenda for this little settlement conference. He handed out a sheet of paper to each of us, and I read it. He was right. It was simple. The first was custody. The second was child support. The third was visitation. There was plenty of room on the nearly blank page to make notes on each issue. Jammer, Pt.3 said, we're really not ready to discuss any of this, and you know it. We don't even have Mr. Collins's full financial statements, and he's already got a book coming out. I know that, Sandy, he said, but we can at least start an outline, and then you can tell me what else you need. That won't be necessary, Christine cut in, looking at me. Christine, Pt.3 said, her chubby little face turning red. No, Kristen said, leaning over the table and holding out her hand for me to take. Not knowing where this was going, I reached out and took it, not letting go. I wasn't kidding about what I said that day, she said in a low voice, her hand squeezing mine almost to the point of bleeding. I'm so sorry. I know I had no right to keep it from you. It didn't start out that way. I didn't know he was yours, and I didn't even realize it until he was 5 or 6 months old. But I have no excuse for not telling you, or at least not doing something about it when I found out. I stared at her, frozen. Her jaw was drawn in, as if she was trying to hold herself together and not lose it before she said what she needed to say. You have every right to seek custody of Ben, she continued, and I know you have every chance of achieving that. But I'm asking you not to do it, Tyler. Please. For Ben's sake, don't do it. Then what do you suggest? Said McNally, his voice soft and reassuring. We think... Pt.3 tried to interject, but Christine interrupted her. If you want custody, Christine said, I won't contest it. Just be generous with visitation. Don't keep my son from me. Our son. She could barely contain her emotions, but her firm resolve told me that the offer was sincere. Now I had something to think about, and I had about 10 seconds to make a decision. It took almost a minute before I made a decision that made Christine ready to explode. Joint custody, I said. You can be a residential parent, Christine. I'm not going to take Ben away from you, but I want him to have a lot of fun visiting. She nodded, brushing away the tears that were now streaming down her cheeks. Okay, Pt.3 said, her relief obvious. Then what about child support? I don't want to get them, Kristen said. Tyler will do what needs to be done. I shook my head. $250 a week, and I'll pay his health insurance and medical expenses and set up a fund for his college. I don't need your money, Christine said. I can. That's not enough, Miss Petrowski interjected, turning to McNally. You know it's only a fraction of what the court will give her. Not a dime, Christine said. I'm going to have to insist, I said, ignoring the lawyers and smiling at Christine. I don't want our son to live like a pauper because you feel guilty for being such a jerk. Okay, Christine snorted, half laughing, half crying as her tears subsided. Thanks. Visits? Said McNally. Generously, I said. I think what we have going on right now is working well, Christine said, and I want to expand it. But I already see him every day, I said. You have to see him, don't you? I'm starting work over semester break, she said. Teaching at an elementary school. One of the teachers is going on maternity leave, and they offered me a contract. So I'm hoping you and your parents can look after it in my place. Are you going to work? I asked, more surprised by that than by the offer of a visit. She nodded, smiling. I know, it's too late. But better late than never, right? I was shocked. She was trying. She was going about her life, not just talking. Holidays and weekends? Said McNally. We'll figure something out, I said. Just write something up for review and we can get it all done. Christine, Petrowski intervened, watching in horror as her ship sank. You need to think about this. You're giving up a lot. Christine looked at her with a sad and patient expression on her face. I've already thought about it, Sandy. It's a lot to give up. I'm doing what I need to do for Tyler and Ben. I'm going to make it, and I'm not going to take money away from Tyler to do it. I need to stand on my own 2 feet. Christine turned to look at me, and I tried to hold back tears both from the joy of being able to see Ben every day and the sadness of seeing how much Christine had changed since the collapse of both of her marriages. Next chapter. I called Marissa that evening. It was late, almost 11:30, but she answered on the first ring, alert and attentive. Yes, she said. Hi, I said back. Great. Hello. Why are you calling? I want to take you to lunch, I said. Tomorrow? Why? Thanks to you, I now have a son I'm starting to get to know. She was silent. Well, I asked. You don't owe me anything, she said, her voice so low I could barely hear the words. But I do owe you. A lot more than just lunch. She fell silent again, and I was about ready to speak when she finally spoke up. You want me to just show up there? I have a photo shoot in the morning, I said. Somewhere in Lincoln Park, for a book cover. I'll be there anyway. Well, since I'm there and all, and since it's the least I can do... About an hour? She said. Sounds perfect. Where do you want to meet? I'll pick you up, I said. That's... I already have your address in my GPS, I said. Got it from Susan, so there's no need to worry. Good, she said. I'll see you then. Next chapter. I pulled up to the house at 1:10, and she was waiting for me at the curb. Marissa hadn't changed since the last time I'd seen her. Still a huge, spiky head of black hair, black eyeliner and lipstick, black clothes. True, she'd allowed herself to throw on a denim jacket for the fall chill. What are you in the mood for? I asked, opening the door for her, then skipped to my side and got in my car before I got fined for double parking. Never mind, she said. You're going to have to help me, I said, focusing on the narrow street jammed with cars on both sides. This isn't my neighborhood. Turn right up ahead, was all she said. 5 minutes later, we pulled up in front of an establishment on Halstead Street. A cafe called Abominably, the big sign read. And thank goodness they had a parking lot. It was a Spanish tapas restaurant that I'd only been to a few times in the past. Being clueless, I let Marissa order and she did a great job. Small plates of grilled octopus, garlic potato salad, goat cheese in a light tomato sauce, and toasted bread to spread it on. The piles of appetizers kept coming and coming. All in all, everything was wonderful and enough to feed an entire army. Marissa, of course, loved it all and greedily devoured every bite on every plate. I'd take a bite or two, and she'd finish it. And so it went on for an hour, We spent that time socializing. She was doing well in school and had already started sketching out a plan for a novel. An idea that came up while I was working with you, she said cryptically, and didn't say anything else. Instead, she turned the conversation to me, to the book, and to the cover photo shoot I'd experienced that morning. Do you really think that's appropriate? Came a voice from behind us as our meal was coming to an end. Turning around, I saw two 70-something men with blue hair and wan eyes standing near our table, heading for the exit. They looked at Marissa in her outfit with cocky displeasure. Did we do something to offend you? Said I. They looked at me like they'd just stepped in a pile of dog shit. It's a nice restaurant, one of the men said, looking at Marissa with a twitching nose. And I expected the diners here to have better manners, I replied. Apparently that's not something they check at the entrance. The ladies sighed, the men glanced over, and Marissa snorted. If it helps, I continued, we can try to do something more inappropriate to offend you further. Like interrupting your private dinner with your snotty attitude? Marissa covered her mouth with her napkin, trying to keep the food in her mouth. The team of old men, humming, put on their expensive coats and silk scarves and strode toward the door. I noticed they had time to stop at the receptionist's desk and say a few heated words. I'm sorry, Marissa said when I turned around to continue our conversation. About what? She resumed her meal, now quiet and sullen. Will there be anything else? The waitress said, appearing as if by magic. From the look of her, she hoped there wouldn't be, which only whetted my appetite. Is there a problem? She glanced at the manager standing next to the receptionist, then back at me, pleading with all her might. I'd like a cup of espresso, I said, and my guest something for dessert. Marissa started to protest, her face telling me she just wanted to leave. Choose your dessert, I told the waitress. And a glass of wine to go with it, if you don't mind. Why are you doing this? Asked Marissa as the waitress walked away. Because, I replied. Because I'm happy to be with you. I feel good, and I'm not going to let a bunch of old bastards ruin our lunch. She nodded, her face softening. And she destroyed the dessert that had been brought to her. Next chapter. That's how the next 2 months went. Working at the store in the mornings, meeting Ben for an hour or two a day in between writing until 11 or midnight, getting up, repeating the cycle. Christine still made an effort to spend time with me, showing interest in my every move. I appreciated her efforts, but I wasn't sure I could love her again. The new novel, which I hadn't yet come up with a title for, was well underway, and I was almost finished with the draft. Considering all the shit that had happened to me since I'd written the first novel, this one was, if nothing else, even bleaker than the first. Tyler? Said Kristen, looking up from the screen after reading the outline. Yes. You still hate me, don't you? Where did that come from? From this book. There's a lot of anger in it. I stared at her, not knowing what to answer. The silence dragged on. Then she walked over to the chair I was sitting in, leaned over and kissed me. I'm more sorry than you can imagine, she said. I tried to smile, and she took the opportunity to sit on my lap and hug me. If my folks hadn't been downstairs with Ben, and if it had been so long since I'd had female companionship, I would have jumped up and pushed her away or something. But I didn't. I know I messed up, she said, looking me in the eye. I know that, and I hate myself for it. I've hated myself for quite some time now, to tell you the truth. Then why? Because I was a spoiled, rotten little bitch and you didn't want to obey, she said. I tried to. You know that, right? I thought that's what you wanted. You just didn't want to go along with me. She nodded. I know that, Tyler. It wasn't you. It was never you. You have to believe that. And yet, I said. Yes, she muttered. But not because he was better than you. He represented something better. Something I thought was the best at the time. But I never wanted anyone but you. You may hate me, she said, her voice softening. I understand that. I'd hate you too. In fact, I hated you. When you were with Allie. It had nothing to do with... I know, Still, she was telling me how good you were, in more detail than I wanted to hear. And all she did was make me cry that I once had you. Try being on my side, I said. I was the one who got dumped. Then I found out you were with him before when you were still with me, lived with me, not even separated, let alone divorced. She nodded, biting her lower lip. What are you doing? I said, my voice nothing more than a hoarse whisper. You hate me, she said. I want you to take it out on me. Too. Then what was it? It was so long ago, she said. Please. You want me to take it out on you? And I'm still sitting here listening to you? Guilt overwhelmed her, and she lowered her eyes. And when are we supposed to do this? I demanded. I'm sorry, she said. You'll be sorry again, I said. You ripped my heart out and stomped on it, Christine. What did you expect? Gratitude? Just not so much anger, she said. I'm not angry, I said. I just think you're playing games with me. Games I don't have time or heart for. A couple times she started to speak but stopped. All I had to do was wait, until about the 6th time. Then my patience broke. Just say it, okay? I'm sorry, she said. For what happened a few minutes ago and everything. It's just, well, I've been thinking about it. About what? Well, something like friends with benefits. I want to be with you, spend time with you. And if that's the only way I can do that, then so be it. I shook my head. I had enough of that when we got divorced. Enough for a lifetime. Then maybe a date, she suggested. Let me think about it. But you've already thought about it, she said. You've been thinking about it for months. And every time I bring it up, you just say you'll think about it. You want my immediate answer? I said. Her lips tightened at the expression on my face and the tone in my voice. Do you ever think you'll say yes? Not to take me back. Just to give me a chance? A chance to prove how much I love you and how much I'm willing to do to make it up to you? I don't know, Christine, I sighed. I honestly don't know. Chapter 15. In early November, I got a call from Natalie. 2 weeks tomorrow, she wheezed. What do you mean 2 weeks tomorrow? I asked. The party to celebrate the release of your first great American novel. It's a mystery thriller, I corrected her. Oh, don't be modest, she cooed, coughing at the end. It's brilliant, and 4 famous authors agree with us. Really? I said, surprised that the ploy of sending out advances for comments had worked. Who read it? James Patterson, Tammy Hogue, Dennis Lehane, and be prepared for this, Stephen King. Stephen King? Yes, she said, as surprised and shocked as I was. He doesn't usually comment much, but he really liked this book. To the point where he might be at the party. Really? Really? Then what do you want from me? A new suit, she said, and to be at the party on the 16th as an author, and to be really nice to the publishers and everyone else. Okay, I said, and then I thought about this. Who else is going to be there? From our group? Well, I'll be there, of course, and Susan. I thought you might want her there. Of course, I said. And Marissa? Marissa, she said, her voice becoming wary. Are you sure? She's really the only one worthy of praise, I said. You know she is. She's the one who made you look at me, and her edit was. Well, it's a much better book. Okay, she said slowly. I'll see what we can do. You're not so sure, I said. Don't get me wrong, she said. I mean, there are a few people who know about her. It's just, none of them have ever seen her face to face? Something like that. Well, she's coming, I insisted. Even if I have to drag her there, kicking and screaming. It'll give her a chance to learn more, maybe help her make some connections. Natalie sighed. It's your party. I'll take care of everything myself, I said. You don't worry. I'll take care of everything. You just make sure they don't kick us out when we get there, okay? You're the boss, she said, and disconnected. Next chapter. The next day at almost noon, a FedEx driver pulled into the driveway and rolled a large, heavy box up to the front door. Tyler Collins, he asked. That's me, I replied. Sign here, he said, flipping open his electronic notepad. I scribbled my signature and took the box inside. It was 20 copies of Long Gone, my first book. Next chapter. I immediately quit writing and then drove to Chicago to buy 3 new suits with all the shirts, ties, socks, belts, and whatnot that came with them. It cost me $8,000, but I wasn't about to look like a hayseed in the dazzling lights of the New York literary scene. My repeated calls to Marissa's apartment went unanswered, and I didn't bother to leave a message. Instead, by 5:30, I was perched on the porch of her house. By 10:30, I was nearly freezing and ready to give up when I saw a familiar long-legged gait walking down the block toward me. She was with someone and they stopped at the porch. Tyler Collins, she said. The tall, skinny guy with her had greasy hair, tight jeans, and 3 earrings in each ear. He looked like the drug-addicted lead guitarist of a punk rock band. He had a bottle of cheap wine in one hand and a cigarette burning in the other. I've been trying to call, I said. I was out, she said. I just need a few minutes. She turned to the guy who was with her. Back off. But now, she said, looking him in the eye. He threw me a dirty look and then did as she said. I hope you have something to drink, she said. He just took my evening's entertainment with him. Come on, I said. We'll go get a drink. No, she replied, turned and walked in the opposite direction. There's a liquor store on the corner. You buy. I hurried after her, and 10 minutes later, she was already letting us into her apartment with wine in hand. I bought her 2 bottles to make up for ruining our date. Sorry to interrupt, I said, throwing off my coat and standing up against the radiator to warm my ass and feet. You bet, she said, turning her back to me and pulling 2 glasses out of the jelly wine jar. I haven't had any fun in months. I brought you a present, I said, reaching into my coat and pulling it out. She turned, carrying the glasses and bottle of wine into the impeccably neat living room of her loft apartment. Setting down the bottle and glasses, she looked at my outstretched hand. Sit down, she commanded, pouring the glasses to the brim. I obeyed and held out the book to her. Mine? I nodded. She opened it. To Marissa, I wrote on the inside cover. A million thanks can never make up for everything you've done to help my dream come true. With incredible sincerity and appreciation, with love, Tyler Collins. Very nice, Tyler Collins, she said as she read the letter. You haven't seen everything, I said, taking the book and flipping through the dedication page, then handed it back to her. With sincere gratitude and much love, I whispered as I watched her read. This book is dedicated to the most incredible sisters on planet Earth, Marissa Key and Susan Karapova. You're goddamn stupid, she said, closing the book and placing it on the coffee table between us. My bad, I said, but I meant every word. She just stared at me, sipping her wine and drinking it in one fell swoop. Good, she said. Then let's have a little party, shall we? She got up and turned on the sound system. John Coltrane played a melancholy saxophone. That's good, she said, sitting back down and refilling her glass. It's not over yet, I said, taking a sip of wine. And it's going to get better from here? They're having a publication party in a couple weeks, in Manhattan. Publishers and probably a lot of authors will be there. Maybe even Stephen King. Stephen King? She snorted. Now that's someone who could use a better editor. God, his early work was so good, so promising. Now it's word processor diarrhea. Still, I said, it'll give you a great chance to meet a lot of very important people. Her eyes narrowed as she realized the meaning of my words. I'll pay, I said. It's the least I can do. Not just for the book. For help with publishing, for editing. I took a sip of wine. To my son. She stared at me for a minute, then started laughing. I'm serious, I said. I know you're serious, she said. That's what's so pathetic. Can you picture me there? With Stephen King? Maybe with John Updike? Be serious, Tyler. I slammed my glass down, startling her for the first time since I'd known her. What the hell are you scared of, huh? Are you afraid that if you meet these people, maybe make a good impression, you'll have to join society? It's good for you, for your career. And you're laughing at me? You won't let me even try to repay you for all you've done for me. She said nothing, preferring to stare at me with a fiery gaze as she drank her second glass of wine in one fell swoop. That's a good idea, I said, taking the bottle of wine and holding it out to her. Get drunk. Dodge your big chance. She let me fill her glass, but only took a sip before setting it back down. Then she stood up and walked over to the window, looking outside while John Coltrane's saxophone set the mood in the dim apartment. Okay, I heard her say. I'll go. I stood up and walked over to the window. And you're going to have fun and try to meet people and be nice, I said, standing next to her and looking at the dark street below. I'll try. And will you celebrate the release of our book with me? It's your book, she muttered. It's our book. I could never have done it without you, and it was next chapter. I spent the night at Marissa's and woke up early, somewhere around 5:30, to the sound of the shower. We were sitting at the table, sipping strong, scalding coffee, and neither of us wanted to talk. So, about last night, she began, after almost 5 minutes. Why? Just don't think you'll be able to repeat that performance, she said, not taking her eyes off the cup in her hands. It's just, well, it's been a while, you know? For me too, I agreed, looking up at her and meeting her eyes when she looked up. Anger flashed in them, and I smiled. However, I continued, it wasn't because of that. At least, not on my part. True, she said, her voice cold. I leaned across the table to her. I'm not saying I love you. Hell, I don't even know how much I really like you. Then what are you saying? That I see something. Something about you that really interests me. Very much so. And I want to get to know you better. She hummed. It seems like you got to know me pretty well last night. And to be honest, I kind of regret it. Why? She asked. Not what you expected. Better, actually. Then what was wrong with last night? Because now you'll think I'm trying to get to know you better, and you'll give me a repeat of last night. And that's not why I'm trying to get to know you better. I'm not dating, she said, and there was something soft in her voice. Regret? Insistence? I couldn't tell. Then we're not dating, I said. Just having fun? She asked. I shook my head. Friends. I have enough friends already. So what if there's one more? Are you really that popular that you can't fit me into your busy schedule? She sipped her coffee, looking at me. You don't even know me, she said. That's the thing. I want to get to know you better. We don't look alike at all, she objected, standing up and finishing her coffee before finishing mine. You? She looked me over from head to toe, raising her right eyebrow. What? Damn yuppie. So it all comes down to clothes? She shook her head. It's more than that, and you know it. Really? Like the fact that I wear jeans and shirts and you dress like, like you, means we can't learn more about each other? Maybe spend some time together? Have dinner or a drink or something? You saw what happened when we went to dinner. People look past you. They pay attention to me, and they think I'm crazy. Then why do you do it? I asked. You know how they look at you, so why do you dress like that? Because it's none of their damn business, Marissa said, her voice rising. I want them to look at me because of me, not because of how I dress. And yet here I am, asking you to do exactly that, and you refuse. I'll say it again. Why? You wouldn't understand. Try me. In response, she stared at me, clamping her eyes shut. Okay, I said. Then I'll call Susan. You know she'll tell me. Leave her out of this. It's not going to happen. You have no right, Tyler. I know, I said, meeting her eyes. Call me selfish. Call me an asshole. But I'm going to find out what makes you tick. One way or another, I'm going to find out. You don't know what it feels like, she pleaded. I've seen you. The way everyone in that little town of Hicksville looked at you. You were handsome, popular, the golden boy. I wasn't any of those things. What, grown up? Grown up. High school, college. I was a weirdo. A tall weirdo with no friends, no money, and no chance of getting the same. And then you decided. I decided to be myself. I tried doing things their way, but it got me nowhere. Now I do things my own way, okay? And it's going just fine. Oh, really? I brushed it off. Bringing home some scrawny piece of shit every month or so to get laid, giving up any kind of affection or friendship. And that works fine? Screw them, she said, slamming the cup down on the table and spilling it all over her hands and the table. And you too. She grinned, her face blazing with anger, resentment, and a million other emotions I couldn't make out. I didn't blink under her gaze. I like you just the way you are, I said, reaching across the table. I don't care if you change even a little. Yeah, sure. Say it in 2 weeks. Say it when you and I go to your precious little party and everyone looks at me like I'm some goddamn monster. And you're a goddamn freak because you're with me. I don't care about them. You say that now, but you will. You'll care about them. About what they think. And what your parents think. And your friends. And everyone else. There was pleading in her voice now. She was convincing herself that I was no different from anyone else. Then try me, I said. What have you got to lose? The worst that can happen is that we'll spend some time together, and then everything will burn out. And you'll end up right back where you are now. But I don't want that again, she pleaded. Don't you see? How many times do I have to be rejected by someone, by everyone, before I'm allowed to just stop trying to make everyone happy? How much pain do you think I have to go through? How many times do I have to be treated like something someone interfered with? I'll never treat you like that, I promised. No matter what happens, I know I'll never treat you like that. That's what they all say. That's what everyone promises in the beginning. But then they do it. And what's the alternative? To go through life in a series of one-night stands and die old, lonely, with no one to talk to? Or being treated like crap for the next 50 years, she replied. There's a better alternative. I leaned back in my chair, sipped my coffee, and looked at her. Marissa was almost frantically asking me to leave it alone. There was something about her, something more. Kindness. Devotion, even. She had read my book, a book by a nobody, and seen something. And for my sake, a complete stranger, she gave up weeks of her life to help. She could say that she just wanted the book published, or that it was good for her career. But if that were the case, she wouldn't have needed to work as hard as she did. No, she cared about people, and she cared about recognition. It was just that she wanted that recognition on her own terms. I want to take you out to dinner, I said. You pick the place. Someplace you're comfortable. Dress however you like. I don't care about that. I just want to take you out to dinner. Her shoulders slumped at the realization that I wasn't going to give in. Her face dropped to the table as if all the struggle was gone. Okay, she finally whispered. I stood up and walked around the table, kneeling down next to her. Taking her chin in my hands, I turned her face toward me and looked into her dark chocolate eyes. We can go as far as you want to go, I said. You want to just be friends? Fine. You want to see if there's something more between us? Then that's fine too. Your pace, your choice. Okay? She nodded, resting her chin on my hand. But I promise, I continued. From the bottom of my heart, I already know you, and I've known you long enough to know what I'm getting into. So I promise I won't leave you, okay? Her lips pressed together and her eyes blinked a few times, like she was trying to hold back tears. Then she wrapped her arms around my neck and pulled me to her. Okay, she said. Just remember what you promised. Part 2. Chapter 16. You're kind of off, Christine said, sitting with me on the back porch as we watched Daddy rock Ben on the swing. I'd gotten home from Marissa's a few hours earlier, spent some time with Mom getting some exercise, and now we were all outside enjoying the last 50-degree weather before winter set in. How's that? Like you met someone, she said, avoiding looking at me. Someone who, well, you're excited about. I was silent, not knowing how to answer her. Did you sleep with her? Who cares? I said, amazed at her boldness. I've slept with a dozen or so women since you left. What do you mean another one? Because you care about this one, she replied, dropping her gaze to her lap and then turning to me. Other than Allie. And I'm not sure you cared about her. I mean, really, really cared about her. Other than her, you haven't fallen in love with anyone since you left me, I said. You could put it this way. I haven't fallen in love with anyone since you dumped me. Since I left you, she whispered. You're wrong, I said. I fell in love, just before I had to come back here, with someone who would be, I don't know, but it was something more. And if it hadn't happened with my mom, who knows? Maybe I would have been with her. Christine fell silent, seemingly stunned by the realization that I was attached to someone other than her. Even though she'd left me for Randy and life in Grant City, she harbored this infantile fantasy that she was my one true love, the only person I could be with. What's the big deal? I said, angry at her reaction. Just watching my dreams get crushed. We were silent for a few minutes, both of us looking at Ben. Look, I said, for some stupid reason trying to cheer her up. I don't know how serious this is. What do you mean? I mean, she's scared, getting involved and all. Why? Because she's been hurt. Christine pondered that for a moment, then put her hand on mine. But you want her to agree, don't you? I think so, I agreed. I want her to at least try. Do I know her? I laughed. Yeah, you've seen her. Is she from around here? My editor, I said. The girl I had dinner with the other night. The one who told me about Ben. Christine's eyes widened. But she's a wonderful person, I objected. Smart, kind, beautiful. In short, wonderful. She may be a little hard to recognize, but from what I've learned. Christine bit her tongue. To her credit, she left my description without comment. So you think maybe you're in love with her? She asked. I don't know. But you want to find out? Uh-huh. Without really trying. Without trying? On us? I looked at her, not knowing what to say. We'll see how it plays out, I said, then laughed. Hell, if Marissa has her way, it's still not going anywhere, okay? Christine nodded, then tried to smile. But she was startled, as if it had finally gotten to her that Tyler and Kristen would never be together again. That our ship had sailed, and she was on deck and left me on shore. There were other women on shore that I could fall in love with, and who could love me back. Then Christine's hand squeezed mine. No matter what, she said, her jaw clenched resolutely. I want you to be happy. I really mean it. And if you can't be happy with me anymore, then I want you to find someone and be happy with them. You deserve that. I nodded. You do too, I said, meaning it. You too. She grinned and kissed my cheek. Thanks. Next chapter. I was going to give Marissa 5 days and then call her and demand that she agree to dinner. On the third day, she called me. Are you really serious about wanting to meet me? She began, her voice timid. I've never been more serious about anything in my life, I confirmed. How about I get to choose where we go? Deal. I heard her sigh, and then she uttered, Tomorrow night, pick me up at 5:30, Greek Islands in Greektown. See you then, I promised. Next chapter. When I picked her up, she was dressed as usual. In black, I think. Her face challenged me, hesitant to say anything. You look beautiful, I said, smiling as I pushed her hand away from the doorknob and opened it for her. You don't have to do that, she said. What? Open the door for me. It's not the 1950s. I can open it myself. I smiled and closed the door behind her, then walked around and got in the car and put it in gear. I'm not asking you to change, I said, paying attention to the street signs as I drove toward Halstead. You don't have to ask me to, okay? We're doing this to see if we can get along. Accept each other for who we are, not try to mold each other into our own vision of the perfect couple. She didn't say anything. Fair enough? I asked. Fair enough, she said. And I was serious before, I said. You do look good. That's only because you know what's underneath. Right, I agreed, then grinned. What? The tattoo, I said, giving her a brief glance before turning left onto Halstead. What about her? She's smokin'. A faint smile appeared on her lips. You really like it? I like it. She sounded pleased. After a minute, her hand moved to the front seat and rested on my thigh. We drove the rest of the way in silence, just enjoying the silent company. Next chapter. Almost an hour and a half later, Marissa pushed the half-eaten plate of baklava away from her. I give, she said, patting herself on the stomach. You're kidding, right? What, you think I'm a pig? I smiled. This is the first time. In the 15 or so times we've been together, this is the first time you've left a crumb on your plate. At that moment, a waiter, some Greek guy in his 40s, with slicked back black hair and a 5 o'clock shadow on his face, came running up to our table. He looked at his plate, then at Marissa, then back at her plate. His face spread into a wide grin. What? She asked. You too? The cooks? He said. I had a bet with them. $50. I told them there was no way you could eat that. They bet me you could. Then you won, she said, her lips curving into a smile. $50, he said, then tapped himself on the temple. I knew it, you know. She's slowing down, I told them. They laughed and said it didn't matter. Great, she said, pushing away from the table. Now everyone thinks I'm a pig. Not a pig, he said, putting a hand on her shoulder. Active, high metabolism, good appetite, but not a pig. Oh no, definitely not a pig. He eyed her, and I could tell by the look on his face that he wanted to mess with her, pig or not. I think we're ready for the inspection, I said, interrupting his stare. He tore it off and held it out to me. I slipped 100 under the check. His eyes lit up at that. Change, he asked, knowing my answer. We're even, I confirmed. His face lit up. Thank you, he said, taking the check and bill off the table and walking away. Thank you, Marissa said, placing her hand on mine. It's my pleasure. Now what? I patted my stomach. I don't know about you, but I could use a walk. She groaned at that prospect, rubbing her distended belly. Come on, I said. It'll do you good. So we did. For the next hour, we strolled across the highway bridge and into the loop, commenting on our favorite buildings and people rushing home late from the office. We guessed which one was a lawyer, broker, trader, etc. Next chapter. An hour and a half after dinner, we parked in a vacant lot half a block from her apartment. Are you coming? She asked. I shook my head. I was serious before. There's not going to be anything else like this until we know, both of us, where this is going. But I want you to come in, she said, taking my hand and squeezing it. I really do. And you'll be on your best behavior? If that's what you want, she said. If it's not. She raised an eyebrow in response to the assumption left behind by her words. It's not what I want, I said, but I think it's for the best. Whatever you say, she said, opening the door. So are you coming? I turned off the engine and joined her. Once in her apartment, as impeccably neat as the last time I was there, I think she was a little clingy. We sat on the couch, listened to jazz, drank wine, and talked about books. What was good? What was bad? Why? How they did it? And what would make good books even better? Then we talked about our childhoods, families, friends, and everything else under the sun. She became easier and easier to talk to as we got closer and closer, and she seemed to let her guard down more and more as our conversation continued. I could get used to this, I said, sipping the last sip of wine. What, me? To jazz, I said. And to you. She smiled and reached for the bottle of wine to pour me another. No, I said, pushing my cup away. I've been here almost 2 hours, and I've got a long drive ahead of me. Stay the night, she said, not offering or demanding. Just like that. Just like, spend the night. Where will I sleep? In the bed, of course. Oh, I said, leaning back and looking at her. And you'll be on your best behavior? Will you? A smile played on her lips. It lit up her whole face in a way I hadn't yet described. Especially that smile, which had a kind of girlish innocence to it. I'll try. Then I will too, she said. I'll try, that is. Do you think you'll succeed? Depends on how much more we drink. Then let's have one more drink and then we'll go to bed. This was my fault. I knew it from the beginning, but it was all about her easy, flirtatious demeanor. I just broke down, leaned in and kissed her. Just a light kiss on the lips, but then she came back and wanted more. And before I knew it, we were already on her couch. The next morning I was putting on my jacket so I could drive back to Grant City and give Marissa a chance to study before class. So when's the next date? She asked. When do you want it? Tonight? How about tomorrow? I smiled. Might be a little difficult, with your school and everything and me trying to write another book. So when? Friday? Time? I shrugged. Depends on what you want to do. Marissa paused, biting her lip and looking up at the ceiling. Then she turned to me, a combination of defiance and awe on her face. I want to meet your friends, she said. My friends? The ones you went to school with. The ones you went out and had fun with that Friday. You said they meet on Fridays. I stammered. There was a good chance that Allie or Kristen or both of them would be at the meeting that Friday. They were both close to Chumley's wife, Darla. Is there a reason you're not saying yes? She asked. The trepidation disappeared. A challenge appeared on her face. I sighed, realizing her tactics. My anger at the endless challenges. See? You're embarrassing me, was quelled by the sudden realization of her underlying motivation. She was afraid. I could see it. It was in the initial trepidation. She was afraid of where we were going together, and afraid that I would be another one to leave her. I smiled, grinning widely. So you're going back to Grant City? Only if we go to the party, she said, a smirk appearing on her face. When's your last class on Friday? Don't be evasive, she said. If I have to, I'll walk out of class. That's not a reason either way. It's just yes or no. Well, I continued, I was just hoping you could come early. I'd really like you to watch me work on the sequel. Her look told me she thought I was being evasive. If you think I'm going to be put off by your book, spend all night. Oh no, I interrupted. It's just that the party starts at 7. Since you're coming and all, I just wanted to make sure you had a couple hours to at least look through it and see if you noticed anything important before I finished it. Her eyes narrowed, trying to catch the catch in my answer. If it helps, I said, I can email you the finished work. Then you'll have a few days to review it at your leisure, and we can discuss any problems when you arrive. That way, we'll be sure to get to the party on time. So you'll drive you to the party? Sure. Why wouldn't I? Hell, you're going to have to meet them all sooner or later anyway. Maybe even sooner, right? I guess so, she said, suddenly not so sure of herself. Good, I said. Then I'll email you the attachments, and if you have time, go through as many of them as you can. Of course, bill me so you get paid. It's not a favor, as you understand. Just call or text me when you're in town so I'll be ready to accommodate you. She nodded idly, her thoughts wandering. Do you think I could get a kiss before I leave? She walked over to me like a zombie, leaned over and pecked my cheek. I'll see you Friday, I said. As I left, she stood in the doorway looking at me, but she didn't see me. Touche. And then I shuddered. What would Kristen and Allie do? Next chapter. On Friday, Marissa didn't lose her temper. She was the same. Black gothic clothes and makeup. The only real change was a long black cloak to match the cooler weather. Her mom, who had never seen her, was at first taken aback by her appearance. But she quickly calmed down when Marissa sat with her for about 15 minutes and patiently questioned her about her recovery and, even better, you'll know if you try this with any grandmother, how she was spending her time with little Ben. Dad, who by now had gotten used to Marissa's appearance, and if not resigned, at least no longer shocked, just listened to them and smiled, only occasionally inserting a comment or question. I sat on the couch next to Marissa and watched them. Then we lurked upstairs for an hour and a half, where Marissa proceeded to point out some serious plot holes, character inconsistencies, and problems with the flow of the new book. Don't get me wrong, she said halfway through destroying my writing. She's actually very good. Probably better than the first one. And I'm sure you would have noticed most of it during the initial editing and revision process. So at least I saved you time, right? Right, I said, knowing I wouldn't have noticed half the errors she'd found in 3 days. By 7:15, we pulled up to Chumley and Darla McWhorter's house last in a long string of cars in the packed driveway. Christine's car was parked directly in front of us. Marissa must have noticed my hesitation, or the narrowing of my eyes, or, more likely, the way my knuckles turned white as I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Trouble? She said. There was more than a hint of sarcasm in her voice. Just so you're ready, I said, turning to her. My ex-wife's car is parked there. You knew she'd be here? Said Marissa, her eyes widening. I nodded. She's very good friends with Darla. And you didn't say anything? I turned to the car in front of us. You wouldn't have believed me. She squirmed, embarrassed that I'd figured out her game. Besides, I said, relaxing, it was bound to happen sooner or later, right? And with everyone here, pretty much both of our friends, Christine's and mine, I don't think she's going to do anything about it. Maybe that's not such a good idea, Marissa said. I shook my head. You're not backing down now. We could go back to your place, she said. Just watch a movie or something. No. I got out of the car, walked around it, and opened Marissa's door. Marissa, who was always quick to open her own door before I could do it for her, just sat there. Come on, I said, holding out my hand to her. She didn't move, so I reached down and took her hand, gently pulling her out of the car. Why don't you relax? I said. It'll be okay. When Darla opened the front door, her smile at the sight of me was replaced by confusion at the sight of Marissa. Hi, sweetie, I said, leaning over and kissing Darla on her chubby cheek. This is Marissa. Hi, Tyler, she said, unclenching her jaws. Marissa. Marissa tried to smile and nod her head in greeting, but froze just as Darla did. Where should we put this? Said I, holding out a plate of venison sausage, cheese, and crackers, standing on 12 bottles of light. Darla immediately came to her senses, smiled radiantly, and took my hand. This way, handsome, she said, leading me through the crowd in the living room and into the kitchen. On that long journey of only 25 feet, I felt two things. Footsteps and stairs. Marissa's footsteps a few inches behind me, and the silent stares of my classmates and their lovers at me and my new girlfriend. I managed a smile and a nod to them all on my way to the table laden with appetizers. Beer or wine? I asked Marissa, once the appetizer plate was pressed against the table between the plate of crudités and the pot of barbecued meatballs, and the beer was on the porch to keep it cold. Marissa turned her head from the crowd, most of whom had already returned to socializing with each other, and her eyes met mine. She looked like a deer in headlights, her eyes seeing nothing. Beer or wine? I repeated. She shook her head. How about beer? Said Allie, appearing behind me and holding out a bottle of light to each of us. Hey, Marissa. Marissa took the beer while nodding at Allie. Thanks. Haven't seen you in months, Allie said, trying to put Marissa at ease. I have to say, I hadn't expected this turn of events. To be honest, I was more afraid of Allie's reaction than Christine's. But Marissa still remained silent. Does that mean Tyler's almost finished another book? Almost. Good. Allie took Marissa's hand, then turned to me. I'm going to go introduce her to everyone, okay? Sure, Allie, I said, keeping my eyes on Marissa. Come on, honey, Allie said, pulling Marissa toward a group of women, including Christine, chatting in the corner. She's hot, Danny Koss said, sipping his beer. Kind of weird looking, Chumley McWhorter agreed with me. Very pretty, though. Yeah, I'd work with her. So is she a vampire or something? Asked Chumley. Marissa was clearly out of his zone, and everyone else's for that matter. Goth, I explained. They call her a goth. In the corner, Christine eyed Marissa warily, and the other ladies didn't know what to do. Allie took the lead, however, encouraging everyone to talk. Does she have any weird piercings? Asked Chumley. Most chicks on the internet have them, Danny agreed, then grimaced at the thought. They probably hurt, you know. I turned and looked at both of them, but their eyes were fixed on Marissa. Jesus, guys, calm down! You didn't answer me, Chumley pressed. Any piercings? Chumley is a plumber, by the way. How would I know? Jesus, Tyler, Alan Wilkinson whispered as he joined us, pushing his long brown hair back and brushing it out of his eyes. You sure make life interesting, huh? What do you mean? Said I. First, you have fun with the most attractive girl, convince her to marry you, go to Florida and make a fortune or something, he said, his eyes fixed on Marissa. Then you go off to write a book and stuff, Danny added. Probably entertained half the hottest beach bunnies in Florida. And now you're here again, Chumley said, picking up all the interesting ones while we still have time to look at them ourselves. Next chapter. So what were you all chatting and laughing about? I asked Marissa on the way home. She was in high spirits, and I realized the evening had been a success. About all sorts of stuff, she replied, giggling. I swear to God, giggling, at the answer. What kind of stuff? You know, Tyler? No, I don't. That's why I'm asking. She turned and looked at me while I drove, then burst into bursts of laughter. Did Christine speak out of turn? What makes you think it was Christine? She teased. Allie, too? Said I. Both of them? And Darla and Christy and Nancy and... Okay. I get the point. Don't be mad, honey, she said, stroking my cheek with her fingertips. It was fun. They're cute. I smiled, not knowing whether to kill my ex-wife and the others or buy them all roses for not pouncing on Marissa like sharks. Besides, she said, now I know some of your predilections. Addictions? Addictions, Marissa confirmed, and then snorted, holding back a laugh. Well, you know, like bondage, for example? Oh, God, I moaned. That's not an addiction. Not according to Allie, no. It was just one time. And it rocked her world, super thing. Anything else? I demanded. Oh, yes, she said. Lots of other things. Christine? And Allie. For Christ's sake, I muttered. Hey, Tyler, she said, her fingertips now caressing my thigh and creeping toward my bag. Yeah? Maybe we're close enough. Maybe know each other well enough. That you could take me to a hotel and, try some of these things with me? Tease, I said, vowing revenge on all gossipy, sucking up and telling women. She only laughed louder. I can't wait to call Susan tomorrow. Stopping at an intersection, I turned to her. Enjoy your laugh, young lady. Perhaps you'll learn about my predilection for spankings. Giving or receiving? She laughed. They don't really go that far back in your past. I couldn't help it. Her laughter was infectious, and I just laughed along with her. Okay, more like giggled, but I'll admit it just took my breath away in that moment. So shameless. So happy. It felt good. It felt good to be a part of her jubilation, even if only as the instigator of the joke. And then I realized I was in love with this girl. In me. In a soon-to-be, maybe if the experts are right, but what do they know, successful author in love with this strange, oddball, silent, brilliant, absorbing incredible amounts of food goth girl. Into this sweet young lady with the brilliant smile and infectious laugh. We had nothing in common except a love of writing and good books. Nothing. Is that really how love works? It certainly wasn't like any love I'd ever dreamed of. Would it strike her too? Would she fall in love with me? That last one scared me, because now more than ever I realized that I really wanted her to fall in love with me. Chapter 17. Problem, Marissa said when I answered the phone 3 days later. What? The party, she said. It's next Saturday. Yeah, I confirmed. We're flying out Friday morning. We'll spend Friday and the next day in Manhattan, go to the party and fly back Sunday afternoon. What's the problem? I won't be able to make it, she said. What? I can't come. Why? She was silent. Come on, Marissa, I said. What's the problem? Something came up, that's all. What? Just something. Something I can't get rid of. I took a deep breath. Ever since we'd parted ways on Saturday at noon, I'd been looking forward to the upcoming mini vacation with Marissa. Then can I at least see you before I leave? Sorry, she said in a barely audible whisper. Marissa, what's wrong? Did I do something? It's not about you. It's just, well, something happened. Can we talk about it? She was silent. Marissa? I'm sorry, Tyler. And she hung up. When I tried to call her back, the phone went to voicemail. I left her a message. Then another message an hour later. 6 messages on Tuesday also went unanswered. By late Wednesday morning, I was frantic. Why don't you get off your ass and go see her? Dad told me. Jesus, you've been walking around all damn day. Just go to her. Find out what's wrong. I looked at him, then at Mom, who nodded in agreement. And I obeyed them. I sat on the porch outside Marissa's apartment for 3 hours before one of her neighbors came home and saw me there. She's not here, the burly woman said. Left early yesterday morning, suitcase in hand, caught a cab. Did she say where she was going? Sorry, she said, and I could tell by the look on her face that she meant it. Next chapter. I was driving home on the highway, holding my cell phone to my ear when she picked up. Hello? Susan? It's Tyler. She paused, then said slowly. How are you? Susan, have you heard from Marissa? She canceled her trip to New York, won't return my calls, and now I've been to her apartment and... She's with me, Susan said with sadness in her voice. What happened? Did I do something? It's not about you, Tyler. Then what is it about? Susan sighed. I can't talk about it. Can I talk to her? Talk to her? At least say hello? That's probably not a good idea right now. Why not? She doesn't want to talk to you. I don't think it would be a good idea to force her, okay? Is there anything you can tell me? Not right now. She paused. Tyler, I'm so sorry. I was afraid you'd think that. I'll tell you that she's not sure how you feel, but I warned her that you probably care about her. I'll tell her that now, okay? Maybe it'll make a difference. Damn it, Susan, I said. Let me tell her that myself. Please. Goodbye, Tyler. I'll call you when I can tell you more. I promise. She disconnected. That's when I got pulled over for driving 80 at 65. It was an older cop who had obviously been here before and recognized the look on my face. Problems with women? I just nodded, staring straight ahead in a daze. Well, getting your ass killed, and probably getting someone else killed, sure doesn't solve them, does it? I shook my head. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Slow the hell down. He walked back to his car, muttering. Then a thought hit me, and I spent the rest of the drive home hoping Christine would be there. Next chapter. What did you and Marissa talk about? I asked once we were in my room. Kristen smiled and then grinned widely. It's not funny, I said, trying to contain my anger. She's gone. Doesn't want to talk to me. From the look of horror on Christine's face, I realized with a sinking feeling that this wasn't something she'd intentionally done. We weren't. All were just stories, Tyler. We really weren't. You saw us. She was laughing. I nodded. What kind of stories? Christine lowered her eyes, squirming. What kind of stories, Christine? I insisted. You know, maybe something racy and some funny stories. When we were together, when you were growing up and stuff like that. I know about the racy stuff, I said. What about growing up? Just some of the things we all did. You know, the first time you smoked dope and painted a mural in your dad's studio? That sort of thing. I nodded. Nothing about, well, we were good to her, Tyler, she said with sadness on her face. You've seen us. I wouldn't have done that to you. I saw you watching her. And how was that? Like you were taking care of her. So it was in your best interest to do something to put up a little barrier, right? I didn't. I swear to God I didn't do that. I wouldn't do that. Her face was furious, and her tone was begging me to believe her. I just stared at her. Hard. You have to believe me. Of course I want you to give us another chance. But do you really think I'm going to ruin your entire relationship for that chance? Why not? Because then you'll never give me another chance, she said. I know you. You'll hate me even more. I don't hate you, I said. But you don't love me. At least not enough to give us another chance. We've been through this before. It's not. I know, she interrupted. But let me tell you what else I know. If you really care about her, and I do something, anything, no matter how insignificant, if I do anything to prevent it, you'll never speak to me again. At least not like this. She was right, of course. Now we have Ben, she continued, her voice softening. You think I'd ruin what we have now with Ben? Knowing it will hurt him? Do you really think I'd take that risk? So yes, I want you back. But I didn't lie, Tyler. I screwed up, I know that, and I really want you to be happy. If I can make you happy, and I swear to God that I will try harder than ever before for the rest of my life, then I want that chance. But I know that if I get in your way, you'll resent me for the rest of your life. And I don't want that. I don't want Ben to see his parents hate each other, even a little bit. Only if I can help it. I nodded. She was right. Neither she nor the other women had said or done anything like that on Friday night. Then what the hell was it? But I can tell you something, Christine said. What? There was something about the way she looked at you, sometimes at us when we were talking. What? I asked. She was scared. She looked at you with a tenderness almost bordering on puppy devotion. But there was something more. Like she was afraid of this, of her own feelings for you. It was time to stop lying to myself. I'd suspected it ever since my conversation with Susan, and now Christine had confirmed it. Marissa still didn't trust me. She didn't trust us. She'd been deceived so many times that she was afraid to give it a chance. Her fear of being rejected or hurt overpowered any feelings she might have had for me. What was I supposed to do now? Thursday night, I packed my bags, preparing to get up at 4 in the morning and get to O'Hare to fly to Manhattan. Immersed in my thoughts, I didn't immediately hear the scraping. But when I did hear the pounding, I went outside to check it out. Mom was lying on the landing, unsuccessfully trying to pull herself up by holding onto the banister. "Mom," I said, rushing down to help her up. "Jesus, what are you doing? Where's Daddy?" "We need to talk," she said. Her speech was almost back to normal. Words were spoken clearly, and the pauses between words were almost gone. "I'm going downstairs," I said, cradling her frail body against me. "No." Her voice was firm, and her expression said she wanted to walk the rest of the way down the stairs. "Okay," I said, and helped her the rest of the way, wrapping her weak arm around my shoulder. Once in my room, she sat down in the chair behind my desk and turned to face me. "You're hurt," she said. I nodded. "Is it Christine?" "No, Mom. It's not Christine." "Then you've made up your mind. You're not going back to her." I sighed. "Pretty much, yes. Yeah, I'm done with that." She paused, her face upset at first. Gradually, a sense of firm determination set in. "Why?" "Because, Mom," I explained, trying to find words for my feelings and failing miserably. "Because she left me. Because she married someone else." "But you love her?" I thought for a moment before answering. "Of course I do. I love her. Always have." "Then why don't you want to try?" "Because, Mom, my love wasn't enough. Mine or hers. It wasn't enough to keep the relationship going." "I've seen worse marriages." "Yeah, but for how long? Have you seen them get through the worst and last? Were they happy? Or just as happy as they were before?" She shook her head briefly. No, they weren't." "I've thought about it, Mom. Really, I have thought about it. But it's two things. One, she left me. No explanation, no nothing. Just walked away. And remarried to a man who, she slept with while we were together. I mean, that's pretty serious." "And you can't forgive that?" I shook my head. "The problem is that I loved her so much. For real. With every breath I took, I worshipped the ground she walked on. It just makes it worse, you know? It's so hard to accept when you love them so much, you can't even imagine them acting like that. And when she did that, it just made me cringe. Maybe if I didn't love her so much, it wouldn't have been so bad. I could forgive the betrayal and all that. But I can't. It's like she didn't love me as much." Mom nodded, her face expressing sympathy and understanding. "I think she'd try now. I think she realizes that and is doing everything she can to prove to you that she will love you even more than before. But I can't believe it. What if we get back together? Would she get bored again? If she really loved me as much as I love her, she would never get bored with me. Did I ruin everything? Of course you did. A lot. I'm not saying it was all her fault. Still, she was the one who left, without a word of warning or explanation, and she was the one who moved on. And honestly, I think the only reason she wants to try is because we're both back here, and Randy is divorcing her. She's back with her family and friends and everything, and there's no more Randy." Mom nodded. "You said there were two reasons." "Ben," I said. "Right now, Ben is growing up in a single-parent household. He sees all of us, but he's used to the way things are. He doesn't know any better, and by the time he's older, he'll have forgotten about Randy and everything else, and that'll be all he knows. If I go back to Christine, and it doesn't work out, well, I just can't hurt Ben like that." "And you don't want to risk it," Mom said, asserting rather than asking. "No, I don't." "Do you think it's better for him to grow up in a single-parent family than a regular one?" "That's not what I think," I said. I just think that a normal family, as you put it, won't last long. And I don't want Ben to have to go through that. Christine and I are getting along now, and I don't want him to have to go through a divorce and all the mess that comes with it. For a few moments, we sat in silence. Then it's Marissa, isn't it? Yes, Mom, it's Marissa. You really care about her, she said. It shows. I don't know. Protective, I guess. And you always seem to be leaning toward her. I think I love her. She nodded, and her grim face lit up with a smile. Though only half of her lips curved in a smile, she was the mother I'd grown up with. I no longer saw the stroke she had suffered. She was my mom again. I can see how you would do that. Not right away, I suppose. But in the few minutes I was with her, I saw something. A kindness that's pretty rare. I nodded, not knowing how to put my feelings into words. You told her, my mom said, that you love her? No, never had the chance. Bullshit, Tyler! My jaw dropped. Mom never swore. Well, almost never. But she didn't swear in anger. You had plenty of chances. She left, I started to explain. Then find her. Find her and tell her. I know where she is, with her sister, in Florida. But she doesn't want to see me. Then figure out a way to get a message to her. Through her sister or something. But how? Mom rose from her chair, clutching her cane and looking down at me. If you really love her, you'll find a way. She slowly made her way the few feet to the bed. Now kiss your mom for making it all better and help me down the stairs before I break my neck. Next chapter. Around 8 o'clock that evening, I was sitting at my desk writing my almost finished second novel. For some reason, and don't ask me to explain, I had come up with the only way to let Marissa know. The only way was to tell Susan how I felt. Tyler, said a sleepy Susan, picking up the phone, do you know what time I have to get up in the morning? Tell her I love her, Susan. Don't tell her I care about her. Tell her I love her. Susan paused. Tell her, I insisted. And also tell her that if she's not here Saturday night, if she's not at this party, then I'm leaving. It's not just my book. It's our book. Yours, Marissa's, and mine. And I want all of us to be there and get what we deserve. But Tyler, Susan began to argue, already fully awake. But Tyler's okay. I'm not going to spend the most important night of my life without the woman I love by my side. So I don't care how or what you do, but you need to make sure Marissa is there for you. Even if only to tell me to back off and get out of her life, she better be there or I won't be. But you can't do that, Susan objected. You're contractually obligated to... I know what the contract says, but I don't give a damn. To hell with the contract. Let them sue. What if I can't? Figure out a way, Susan. I mean it. She better be in Manhattan by Saturday morning, and she better be at this party. But it's blackmail. No, Susan, I said, lowering my voice. It's the only way I can tell the woman I love how I feel. And to let her know how seriously I take it. Mark my words, because I mean every one of them. Susan sighed. I'll see what I can do. Thanks, I said, but she disconnected without saying goodbye. Chapter 18. The flight went without incident, and the meetings with publishers, editors, lawyers, and graphic designers were boring beyond belief. Dinner on Friday night was good, though. About halfway through dinner, things got a little brighter when Natalie left the table to take a phone call. She returned 5 minutes later, a smile playing across her face. She'll be here, she told me. Marissa? Of course, Marissa. Who else? When? Tomorrow morning. Flight's at 10. Which exit? I asked, looking forward to being there. Natalie shook her head. Absolutely not, buddy. You've got a lot more meetings in the morning, and in the afternoon you need to rest. My eyes narrowed. You're not lying? What good would that do? If I lie, you'll just leave. She leaned over and patted my arm. You just calm down now, okay? Try to enjoy yourself. Maybe you'll be more attentive in meetings tomorrow. Take a nap after lunch. You'll see her at the party. You're not lying, I repeated, this time more of an affirmation, like I was trying to convince myself. Ahem, said the short, gray-haired guy at our table. Yes, Riley, Natalie turned to the publisher. This Marissa you're talking about, he said, his voice higher than you might think. She wouldn't happen to be the girl who edited this book, would she? Found it and handed it to you? Exactly her, I said. And she'll be here? He asked, looking both surprised and delighted at the thought. She'd better be here, I said. What do you mean, Tyler? He asked. If she's not here, I began. What he's trying to say, Riley, Natalie cut in, her hand tightening on my forearm and squeezing it until it bled. What he's trying to say is that he thinks she deserves the lion's share of the credit. Oh, I don't know, Riley said, smiling lightly at me. She didn't write it. You did. So the credit is certainly there, but probably not the lion's share, right? The lion's share, I said. If it hadn't been for her, you never would have seen it. And you read the final draft I prepared before she helped with the edits. He nodded. Yes, I admit it's even better than we expected. And your own final version was excellent as it was. But hers is better, right? He nodded. Noticeably so. The lion's share, then, I repeated. Then I'll look forward to meeting her, he concluded, diving back into the duck breast on his plate. I smiled, wondering if he would still think that way when he saw her in person. I remembered the first time I'd seen her, and wondered how I'd ever fallen in love with that ghost on my doorstep. Next chapter. The party started at 8 o'clock on Saturday night, and I got there 5 minutes early. The party was in the ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, and there were huge posters of my picture and book cover scattered all over the place. There were also several hundred copies of the book for the press, critics, and various literati and celebrities who were to attend the launch. I spent an hour and a half autographing each book. There were already several dozen people there, mostly crowded around the bar or at one of several tables laden with canapes. I didn't recognize any of them. Nor did I see Marissa. I felt my hand being squeezed and turned around. Susan, I said, leaned over and pecked her cheek. Congratulations, Tyler, she said, looking around the room and back to me. You should be proud of yourself. Thanks, I said, seeing that she was with someone. Someone in her 30s, like me, with a square jaw and short-cropped light brown hair. No Marissa. Where? I want you to meet Todd Muller, she said. We're dating, Todd said, smiling and holding out his hand to me. You can say it, babe. Really? We're dating, she said, smiling at him. Tyler Collins, I said, responding to the firm handshake. Thanks for coming over. And congratulations, too. Susan is a very special lady. He smiled at her, and she answered him with a warm, easy smile. Don't I know it, he said. We met during a trial a few years ago. She wiped my ass. And then I ran into her at the grocery store. A Cuban grocery store, no less. A little hole in the wall, lurking in an alley. She patted his forearm. You don't have to tell him the whole story. He shrugged and grinned. I just told it. Except for what we drank. Something from a papaya. And one thing led to another. And here we are, Susan said, giving him a peck on the cheek. I'm happy for you, I said. You deserve it. She smiled warmly at me. And you're the one who encouraged me to try it. I nodded, still looking over their shoulders and glancing around the room, trying to spot Marissa. She'll be here soon, Susan promised. You know how it is. Makeup and traffic and all that. I searched her face for signs of deception, but she seemed honest and sincere. Tyler, I heard a voice say. Come here for a minute, will you? I headed toward the entrance and saw Riley McMasters standing next to two men I'd seen a million times before in pictures and on screen. Tyler, he said, I'd like to introduce you to Clint Eastwood and Stephen King. I'm honored, I said, shaking both their hands in awe. Thank you, Eastwood wheezed in a familiar voice. Nice to meet you, Tyler, King said as I shook his hand. It's a great book. Really well done and everything. Yeah, Eastwood agreed. Thank you. Really. From the two of you, that's very high praise, right? Eastwood chuckled. You don't know why I'm here, do you? For the party? I suggested. Or is there going to be someone here you want to see? He has no idea, King said. Eastwood chuckled. I'm the lead partner in Tricorner. Tricorner? Now they both chuckled, shaking their heads incredulously. Tricorner bought the movie option, Natalie cut in from behind me. Hey, Clint, Steven. They both gave her a hug and a peck on the cheek. Natalie, you're an old battle axe, King said. Still finding hot newbies, aren't you? When are you coming to my agency? She answered him. They all smirked, interjecting barbs. But my thoughts were preoccupied with something else. By 9:30, my nerves were on edge. Susan, facing them, kept preaching patience, but my patience was running out. By then, I had spoken to almost every one of the 200-plus people in the banquet hall and had returned to Eastwood and King, who were now joined by Carl Hyacin, an incredibly talented mystery writer from Florida, one of my favorites. So you're saying this girl, Hyacin said, with a look of disbelief on his face. This Marissa. She's the one who read it and got Natalie to contact you? And edited it, I confirmed. True, King said. And she's a student? Working on her doctorate in English. Creative writing, too. And Natalie's been listening to her? Said Hyacin. I nodded. She's really good. And at editing, too? Asked King. I mean, was it just spelling here and a phrase there or something else in there? No. It was a whole ball of wax. Does she spell too? Asked Eastwood, speaking a few words for the first time in 5 minutes. A little, I guess, I answered. She wants to. I know she does. But she's waiting for more experience. Life experience, as she says. How's she doing with dialogue? Eastwood asked. Writing dialogue. How is she? Have you read the book? All three nodded their heads. Did you like the dialogue? The nods continued. She helped me revise a lot of things. Not completely. Mostly a word here and an accent there. But it did change a lot of things, that's for sure. Hyacin whistled softly, King nodded thoughtfully, and Eastwood only pursed his lips and narrowed his eyes. Holy shit, Hyacin whispered, coming out of his reverie. What? Said I, seeing Eastwood's eyes narrow to little slits and King's mouth open in awe. My God! Eastwood wheezed. I wish I was 30 years younger. Holy shit, King agreed. I turned to see a tall, elegant woman in a simple green sleeveless dress enter the room and shyly look around. Her hair was cut short and parted to one side, with that part almost covering her left eye. A small green purse was clutched to her ribs, her only jewelry besides her dress and simple high-heeled shoes. Marissa, I whispered, amazed at the transformation. You know her? Said King. Is that her? Asked Hyacin. The editor? You had to work with her? Said Eastwood reverently. Sorry, I muttered, walking toward her without looking back. She noticed my approach when I was still 20 feet away from her. Her body tensed, the nervous, searching look replaced by embarrassment or shame. Her eyes lowered to the floor, then rose again to meet my gaze. You came, I said with relief. She nodded. You? I didn't recognize you, I said. When you walked in, I had to look a second time. Do I look okay? Yes, I said, reaching for her hand. You look normal, maybe even a little better than okay. Really? She said. Because I feel like a Barbie doll. Barbie dolls have never turned me on before, I whispered in her ear. She smiled, or at least tried to. But she was like a ball of nerves, and her eyes shot back and forth to the floor and focused on him. Why don't we get some fresh air? I said. She nodded, took my hand, and followed me out onto the balcony. Here, I said, throwing my coat over her shoulders to keep the breeze off the balcony. Are you serious? She asked, her eyes searching my face as I spoke. What you asked Susan to tell me? Is that what you meant? That I love you? Said I. She nodded. You're damn right I meant it. More than anything else in the world. I've never been so serious in my life. She didn't smile. Instead, her eyes sank into mine and wouldn't let me go, and her face searched for any sign of a lie. I sighed. I'll tell you when I realized it. On the second night. Well, not really, but the next day when I was driving home. The second night we spent together? When you didn't? You know. The first night was great, don't get me wrong, I explained. But the second night was magical. And the drive home was pure torture because I knew I wouldn't see you again for days. I realized I didn't want to wait a couple of days. Not even a couple minutes. But I called you first, she protested. I was afraid to push you. You made it clear that you don't want to? Not sure. It could just be infatuation, she said. You're describing infatuation. I shook my head. I've thought about that before, but it isn't. It's like it was when Christine and I were first together, only stronger, much stronger. I remember that. I loved her with every breath I took, but I could still put it off when I wasn't with her. And with you, I can't even think about it. The book hasn't gone anywhere since that second night. Maybe 10 or 12 pages, and they're all crap. I know I'm going to have to rewrite it in its entirety. Then say it, she said. Say it again. Convince me. I love you, Marissa Key, I said, coming close and taking her face in my hands, looking into her deep brown eyes. I swear to God, this is not puppy love. It's not lust or infatuation or anything like that. I know. I've been through it, and it's not what it is. She pressed her lips together. Don't try to make yourself believe it, I said. Just believe it. It's a fact. And you need to face it. You can't run away just because I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you, proving every minute of every day of every year, that I love you. Tears came to her eyes again, but she was still silent. I love Ben too, I said. But you know that. No more and no less. In a different way, the way a father loves his son. And so do my family members. I love them too. Don't you? She nodded, urging me to finish. You, I continued, smiling softly. I love the way books are written about you. The books we both mock. Sentimental romantic crap. Only this is stronger, more real. I love Ben, but I want his ass out of the house by the time he graduates college, if not sooner. And my folks? Well, I'm already looking for a new place to live with my mom almost getting better and all. I kissed her, only lightly touching my lips to her tear-wet lips. I could taste the salt and the scent of peppermint. And me? She whispered. I never want you to leave the house. Only if I'm with you. I could spend every spare minute of every day from here to infinity with you and never get enough of you. Are you sure? Pretty damn sure. And 5 years from now? Will you still feel the same way 5 years from now? If we play our cards right, it will only get stronger. Is that a suggestion, Natalie? I heard from behind me. Riley, Natalie sighed. You're ruining everything. You. Men! Marissa ignored them, instead wrapping her arms around me and burying her face in my shoulder. I love you too, she said. More than anything in the world. But I'm scared. Is that a confession? Said Riley. Hush, Natalie hissed. What's wrong with you? If I give you a ring, will you accept it? I whispered in her ear. And would that convince you that I'm serious? But I ran away, she said, snorting. I know, I replied. But I know why you did it. You were afraid. You didn't leave because of, I don't know. I just know it's not like it was with Christine. Not like when she left. But still, she said. I was abandoned, I said. You didn't abandon me. You were scared and you ran away. But you wouldn't do that again, would you? I felt her head bob on my shoulder. And you really do love me, don't you? Yes. And now you know I love you, right? And I mean really know. You know I'm telling the truth. I know, she confirmed. So let me say it again, maybe a little more formally this time. Should I buy a matching ring and fall to my knees? Or do you just want to run off and get married somewhere? Or am I bringing all this up too soon? Should I wait for the ring before you? You know, she said, pulling away and looking at me. Tears glistened in her eyes, but her lips curved in a joyful and playful smile. You little horny dog, I accused. I think that was consent, Natalie confirmed for Riley. Next chapter. Hours later, Marissa spoke up. Can you really believe this? Clint Eastwood wants me to write the script. To help me and him write the script, I corrected her. And only if they actually make a movie based on it. Whatever, she said. Clint Eastwood. And Stephen King still wants you to edit a book for him. I don't know if I want to do that now, she said. Why? Well, I mean, what can I do? Jesus, Tyler, he's Stephen King. You'll break his heart if you say no now, I said. She was silent for a moment. What are you thinking? Just wondering, that's all. About what? I asked. Whether any of them would look at me with one eye if I, well, you know. No, I said, genuinely embarrassed. I don't know. What do you mean? If I showed up as Marissa. Marissa is the young, angry, black-clad chick you described to them. I don't think anything would have changed, I said. That's the Marissa I fell in love with, the one I still love to this day. That Marissa hooked me, so I'm sure she would have hooked them too. So this new Marissa, she said, flinching as I ran my fingertip along the lines of her tattoo. Do you love her too? Is she the real Marissa? I said. Maybe. I rolled over onto my back, propping my head up with my hand and stared at her. Why? Why did you do that? I mean, you look amazing, but I'm going to love you no matter how you dress or what color makeup you wear. For your sake, she said. I didn't mean to embarrass you. I looked at her. I've never embarrassed myself. Not once. She smiled. I know you have. That's why I love you. And why I really know, that you love me too. But this was your night. I wanted it to be dedicated to you, not that damn editor you're so madly in love with. I smiled. Well, that's nice. New look? Oh, that too. But no. I was thinking about how great it would be to have Clint Eastwood lusting after my chick. Think about it. He's a Hollywood star, Dirty Harry, for crying out loud, and he wants my woman. She laughed. And how do you know I don't lust after him too? Because you're in my hotel room. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.